Welcome to Close Listening. I'm Zach Morgenstern, joined as always by silent co-host Ludwig von B. Today we're talking about The River, Bruce Springsteen's first and only double album. It comes out in 1980. And its being a double album fits in with the broader philosophy of this project. Compared to the previous few Bruce Springsteen albums, this is an album that takes its time. And to explain my point, let's start with Disc 1, Track 1. This album opens with a song called The Ties That Bind, which was originally meant to be the title track. So Bruce Springsteen's previous work was epic, sometimes too epic. He tried to tell these abstract stories of young adults being adventurous, but fated to poverty and misery. He sang in a roaring voice that was cool, but sometimes so mighty that you couldn't hear the individual words he was saying. The Ties That Bind is thus a revelation of a song, even though there's not too much to say about its lyrics. And that's because it's a song that's basically about one idea. Bruce Springsteen brings the same intensity he brought to his earlier songs. It's a very intense performance, but you can absolutely tell what this song is about, and he manages to clear his vocals up enough so that you can actually hear the lyrics he's singing. It's basically a song of no matter how alienated you feel, no one is an island. You cannot break the ties that bind. Track number 2 is called Sherry Darling. This one has a bit of a reggae feel to it, and it's a song about finding his mother-in-law, or I guess his girlfriend's mother, it sounds like, except it's kind of like a mother-in-law like relationship, unbearable. So yeah, I guess it's a kind of goofy marital humor song, though with that dark side that comes to so many Springsteen songs because he's driving his mother-in-law to the welfare office. Track number 3, Jackson Cage, is a bit more like the earlier all-encompassing epic Springsteen songs, but I still like it. I think the vocal is fairly clear, and it's just a panache of cynicism about life in what I believe is a suburban town in New Jersey of the Jackson Township. Track number 4 is called Two Hearts. So this one is closer to being a straight love song, and it is fun with what I've described before as Bruce Springsteen's brand of benevolent yet overt masculinity. He's very loud and strong sounding, yet also tender and non-threatening at the same time. So it's not just a sentimental song. What makes it so unique and catchy is that it's a tough guy being sentimental, particularly with the part where he goes, "Once I spent my time playing tough guy scenes, but I was living in a world of childish dreams. Someday these childish dreams must end to become a man and grow up to dream again." So just as he was saying in his earlier song of growing up, he's someone who doesn't see growing up as this absolute transformation. Growing up is the freedom to be the best version of your child self. Track number 5 is called Independence Day. This one opens with what sounds like American Revolution era flutes, and it's a slow song about romantic falling out. So nothing in the lyrics references America or the actual Independence Day holiday, but it definitely feels like it's making some kind of vague political statement. It seems like it interprets independence as a personal thing, as going out on your own, and thus maybe being an analogy about America kind of losing its potential when the American dream becomes less about collective uplifting and more about the modern libertarian or neoliberal philosophy we associate with the country today, which I guess would have started by the time this album comes out, because this is now the Ronald Reagan era. Track number 6 is Hungry Heart. This is a giddy, happy sounding song. I don't know how many of you will know the children's cartoon Miss BG, but it's funny. Every time I hear the intro to this, I end up singing the Miss BG theme in my head, and I didn't even particularly like Miss BG, so it's more of an awkward association. Anyway, it's actually a bittersweet song. It's about infidelity and almost saying infidelity as an inevitable, but it nonetheless brings out the album's lighter side. I guess it's sort of like a barroom boozy chorus of pseudo happiness. Track number 7 is called Out in the Street. So this gives us the familiar themes of young love and a gritty working life. What makes this one somewhat special is that it captures a moment of excitement. Bruce calls you in from the beginning with his invitation of "Put on your best dress, baby." Track number 8 is called A Crush on You. This one actually has fairly good lyrics, but you can almost miss them. I know I've praised Springsteen's singing on this album up to this point as being more articulate, but now he's back to that buff voice, and this one is actually cartoonishly gravelly. So on the verses, you can barely hear what he's saying. But nonetheless, it's a well-produced doo-wop song, and if you take the time to look at the lyrics, kind of fun. Well, now she might be the talk of high society. She's probably got a lousy personality. She might be an heiress to a Rockefeller. She might be a waitress or a bank teller. So cynical take on crushes. Too often we develop crushes before we actually get to know people and realize whether they actually make sense to have feelings for. Track number 9 is called You Can Look, But You Better Not Touch. This is a kind of crude, lightly comedic one. It starts out singing about antiques, but then it becomes about sexual desires. I don't know. I felt like when it was about antiques, it had the potential to be another kind of quasi-protest song with a bit of youthful naivety to it. And then track number 10 is called I Want to Marry You. This is a moderately slow doo-wop song, and it's kind of provocative in that you don't know the full story of what's going on. So it kind of sounds like the singer is being this full of himself savior who's just like, you're a single woman. I need to marry you so you don't have to be alone. I feel like what works about the song is it invites you to speculate. Presumably, the singer is not being that bold faced, but how much backstory is there actually? We don't really know. And then finally, we get the showstopper on this record, the title track, The River. So, as I said, the sort of appeal of this collection is, on the one hand, it's the same kind of subject matter that Bruce Springsteen sang about on Born to Run and Darkness on the Edge of Town, but he's being a bit more focused in each individual song. Each individual song is not trying to be everything at once. So rather than capturing a feeling, as so many of those earlier songs do, The River actually tells the story of some high school kids who are having fun, but then there's an accidental pregnancy, and for whatever reason, abortion is not an option. I mean, I know Bruce Springsteen grew up in a Catholic household, so that's probably the kind of community he's imagining. And then also, it doesn't have that big band sound. It's primarily acoustic guitar and harmonica. So it's giving the Bruce Springsteen themes a more raw, more real feel. Great way to wrap up disc 1. Now, disc 2 definitely feels like the weaker effort here. It's not a completely evenly distributed double album. That said, there are certainly some high moments, starting with track 1 of disc 2, which is called Point Blank. So, I mean, I've been talking about the themes of so many of these songs, and without really knowing Bruce Springsteen well, it's hard to not just keep repeating the same things: economically depressed towns, people trying to feel like they're young, live up to their dreams, etc. So rather than looking at the sort of poetic meaning of Point Blank, I feel like this song is best appreciated if you just look at the literal meaning of the shock of death coming and you not really seeing it. You know, Bruce Springsteen sings about so many risk takers in his songs. And I guess the idea is even if people live dangerous lives or they live in dangerous places, when the actual tragedy strikes, it still hits you point blank. Track number 2 is a fun one. It's called Cadillac Ranch. Now, Cadillac Ranch is this tourist attraction where you have these Cadillacs standing up vertically in their painted funky colors. It's really hard to tell with this one if he's really talking about that or he's just generally talking about liking Cadillacs. This is another great example of Bruce Springsteen being a bridge figure between masculinity culture and more liberal and progressive people, in that he talks about cars, but in a way that's not alienating to people who, aren't obsessed with cars. He names drops figures like James Dean, which is a sort of more universal car reference. Some interpret the song as being a metaphor about death. I guess maybe because the Cadillacs in Cadillac Ranch are upturned, but I certainly wouldn't have gone there. But yeah, it just seems like from a cursory look, a bunch of people have. Track number 3 is I'm a Rocker. This one is fun. It basically sounds like a Meatloaf song, like Hot Patootie from Rocky Horror or something. So a doo-wop tune cranked up to 11. Track number 4 is called Fade Away. So on Bruce's previous album, Darkness on the Edge of Town, he had a song called Racing in the Street, which took the light 60s song Dancing in the Street and gave it serious subject matter. And Fade Away, it feels like he's taking the Buddy Holly song, Not Fade Away, and rewriting it as a more serious song. Now, in the case of this one, it's just a despairing love song. It's about seeing a relationship go away and wanting to feel like you're not just fading away, like you still mattered to that person. So it's just a fun intertextual exercise. Next, we get a song called Stolen Car. This is a sad loss of love song, and its defining moment is its bridge, where Bruce sings, "And I'm driving a stolen car down on Eldridge Avenue. Each night I wish to get caught, but I never do." So, in these songs and in some songs from his earlier albums, Bruce Springsteen clearly thinks a lot about people with death wishes. And I don't know where this obsession comes from, but it could be tied to his sense of forever being a kid. Maybe there's this longing to get in trouble so you can once again be disciplined or rather cared for by your parent figures. Then we get track 6, Ramrod, another over the top 50s song that is just a sex metaphor. Track number 7 is called The Price You Pay. This is a slow song that suggests all people live in a perpetual state of guilt. So we do bad things, there's no getting away from your shame, and the song seems to suggest that everyone has that in one form or another. One line that stood out to me is, "And in one last breath, they built the roads, they rode to their death." So I genuinely can't tell with this record what Bruce Springsteen's relationship to cars is. I don't know if it's kind of like Brian Wilson, the Beach Boys primary songwriter who had to write a ton of songs about surfing, but did not surf himself. I did look it up briefly and saw that Bruce Springsteen did not get his driver's license at 16. He waited till he was in his 20s, and he was pretty much pressured into it for musical reasons. So the idea that on the one hand, he feels like cars are part of his aesthetic, but he's deeply terrified by them, that could be what's going on. At the same time, Bruce Springsteen today seems to unironically love cars. He has like a giant collection of cars. So yeah, I guess I'd have to learn more about the guy. Track number 8 is called Drive All Night. This is another soft, slow song about a car crash. So again, what is Bruce Springsteen's relationship to cars? Did he live in a context where he felt like car crashes, people dying on car adventures was happening all the time? Or was it just a motif he, for whatever reason, wanted to keep writing songs about? And then we get track number 9, Wreck on the Highway. And yeah, the theme of auto danger continues with a very 80s production sound. I guess it sounds kind of like Poncho and Lefty era Willie Nelson. So this album becomes a bit fixated on cars at the end, which has been a fixation up to this point in Bruce Springsteen's career in general. So it certainly gets a bit repetitive. That said, there's no such thing as a Bruce Springsteen song up to this point where he doesn't bring his A game, where there's not a ton of energy. So usually when I'm listening to a double album, I get to a point where like, they should cut half these songs. This is kind of boring. This one pretty much works. And while I knew the songs The River and Hungry Heart going into it, there were so many other fun points on it. The Ties That Bind is an amazing opening. Sherry Darling continues to be a lot of fun. Cadillac Ranch, I'm a Rocker, and then on a sort of darker note, songs like Point Blank. Amazing double album, probably one of the best in existence. So let me know about your thoughts on The River, and I'll be back with more music reviews in the near future. I'm Zach Morgenstern. This is Ludwig von B. See you next time.